Shamu, everybody. We're back at the history of the left-hand path, and now we're getting into the 1930s and 40s, and those wacky people all over the world are doing world wars, and those wacky occultists are also doing those, plus some more crazy hijinks. Alright, that is about as much brevity as I can put into this video. Um, because we are moving forward after we had Blavatsky, and we had Crowley, and we had Arthur Avalon, and we had Dion Fortune, and now we're moving to the 1930s, 1940s, and we all know what was going on then. So we're about to get into, as I said in my little interlude video, some very heavy topics. This is your last chance, traveler, to step off this road for a couple videos. The humor's not landing, and I'm trying to make this as light as I can because it's about to not be light. But, a light note, I have heard back from the Council of TikTok, and my appeal of the community guide violation was successful. So part 2 of the history of Lucifer is back for people to watch. If you haven't watched that, go watch both of those before this. Go check them out. Those are they're going to be relevant for what happens. So if you remember, we talked about Dion Fortune, placed this within mystical Kabbalah, set these things as kind of a moral issue, expounded more and springboarded off of Crowley. And then Dion Fortune went a little kooky and was like, there's mysterious black lodges and shadow brotherhoods. And was a little kooky. Now, we're in the 1930s, and she's not so kooky. Because we are now going to be talking about the Fraternus Saturni. And we're just going to rip it. There's probably going to be a violation for this one too, but we're just going to rip through. So the Fraternus Saturni kind of has a prehistory. In 1925 to 1926, what happens is there's this kind of Vita Pansophia milieu going around. The Thelema has been going for a while now. Crowley sends out a missive saying, as if Crowley knew the kind of people that had things occurring, set out a thing and said, hey, while we are all independent and semi-autonomous lodges, we do need to recognize the central authority within the AA that is held there, and this lodge, and that things need to be accountable, and this is who you're going to be accountable to. Well, a man named Heinrich Tronker was not a fan of this. Heinrich Tronker was helping Crowley at the 1925 Velda Conference. There was a faction of people who were not happy with this, and they were led by a man named Eugene Groche? I'm not sure. But his order name was Gregor A. Gregorius, where he was willing to accept Liber Al, but reject subordination to this figure, to this kind of figurehead, and to Crowley, which begins to set a pattern of utilization of thelemic formulae, but complete independent governance, and not really caring what Crowley has to say. Which is important. This is a very important note, that this is coming out of Thelema, and that they do kind of have a hatred here for Crowley. So, formally, the lodge is opened Easter of 1928 in Berlin. It is shut down after about a decade, because now we are talking 1940s Germany, who put a severe prohibition and ban on any form of occult lodge. It does get reconstituted after 1945, continues to grow. By 1960, there's about 100 members or so. We'll get a little more into this. But internal rifts start to open up between 62 and 69. That causes a later reformation of the degree system to incorporate a 33rd degree, mirroring the Masons. And then in the 70s through the 90s, there are multiple offshoots, such as the Ordo Saturni in 1979, notably. So, that's a cliff notes of what's happening. Now we're going to dive in deep because we need to know what was going on with the idea of the left-hand path here. So, Fraternus Saturni centers on this kind of Saturnian cosmology, where they put Saturn as this, like, guardian of the threshold, and he acts as, like, this testing and structuring demiurge. If you're familiar with the idea of Saturnian currents and what they're supposed to represent, it's that cranked up quite a bit. But this path they set up, it is deliberately severe, it becomes incredibly elitist, and it takes a hard anti-Christian stance in its tone. So the reason Lucifer matters in our history of that is because Lucifer is incorporated into this kind of pseudo-Gnostic thing that they start to work on, where Lucifer is framed as the higher octave, or the higher eighth of Saturn, for reason and enlightenment, and Satan also existing as the lower octave of Saturn. The Fraternus Saturni stressed a Luciferian Mass that was a sacrament of light, in which they believed transcendence was met with immanence. Now, a huge part of the tenets here, then, if there is this Saturnian demiurge, if Lucifer is bringing enlightenment through the demiurge, and we're pulling away, but we're still piggybacking off of Thelema, what we end up doing here is that the Fraternus Saturni starts to riff on the idea of Thelema, love is the law, love under will, where they introduce the concept of Mittellos Leb. I don't know how to speak German. Mittellos Leb, compassionless love, where it hits this kind of structured, rigid, non-empathetic, non-sentimental love to direct action. This is a large thing that occurs within the idea of Fraternus Saturni. Love is the law, love under will, merciless love is kind of the call and response that is embedded. This is already 10 minutes. I'm trying to gloss over some of this. There is more that's to be said, so again, this will be a 2-part tonight. This might actually end up 3. I need to severely reference my notes, because I need to make sure I am correct here, and because I can't do this one as off the cuff. There's a lot here that we're about to be digging into. So, I will grab a drink, and I will return for part 2.